Hi, guys, it's Miss Kelly, and we are starting chapter 11 in our book. And the title of this chapter is To Declare Independence or Not. And this chapter is all about the time in American history leading up to the Revolutionary War, where there was a big split between people that felt that we should break free from Britain and the king and become our own nation, and the people that thought that we should remain loyal to the king and continue to sort of follow his rules. And that is what we're going to talk about in this chapter. So first of all, the question that we're going to focus on for this chapter is, what were the arguments for and against colonial independence from Great Britain? So that's the question that we want to have in the back of our mind as we go through this chapter. That what were some of the reasons that people had to either support breaking free and making their own nation, and what were some of the arguments against that? So we're going to go through, I'm going to read the introduction to you, and you can follow along on your screen. I believe it is slightly different than your textbook, but the main idea is still there, so you can follow along in your textbook. And we'll talk about some of the arguments for and against. Okay? Tensions grew between Great Britain and the American colonies between 1763 and 1774. In this lesson, you will read about colonists who argued for and against separation from Great Britain. People who wished Great Britain did not rule the colonies were called patriots. Okay, so the patriots were people that did not want Great Britain and the king to rule the colonies. They thought that Great Britain was taking advantage of them and believed that the colonists would have more freedom and security if they were their own nation. Patriots argued for their cause in speeches and newspaper articles. Others took stronger actions, such as joining mobs that attacked the homes and businesses of those who disagreed with them. There were also colonists who wished to remain loyal to the monarchy and not separate from Great Britain. They were called Loyalists and believed that the British provided order to the colonies. So just think loyal. The word loyal is in the word loyalists. So the loyalists were the people that wanted to stay loyal to the king. And loyal means that you sort of make a promise that you're going to be faithful to somebody, or you're going to support somebody. So the loyalists supported the king. Some loyalists delivered speeches arguing that America should remain under the rule of Great Britain. Some acted more passionately, carrying out armed attacks on patriots. So there was violence on the patriot side, and there was also violence on the loyalist side. Many colonists did not take sides because they did not care whether or not America separated from Britain. And those people were called neutral. Okay, if they were neutral, meaning they didn't take a side, they didn't believe that we should break away, and they didn't really believe that we should stay loyal. So they kind of didn't really want to get involved. Maybe you've felt this way before. If you've ever been in the middle of an argument between two friends, you don't want to get involved. You just want to stay neutral. This lesson tracks how 6 important colonists dealt with the question of separating from Great Britain. Why did some colonists want to remain under the rule of Great Britain and its king? Why did others want the colonies to part ways with the British? Understanding these perspectives will be important when you learn about the American Revolution. So down here we have it looks sort of like a T-chart where there are some patriot arguments and there are some loyalist arguments. And, when people were sort of deciding what side they wanted to be on, they would have reasons for that. So let's take a look at some of the answers here. Some of the answers that the Patriots had for wanting to break away from Great Britain and the king were that they felt that the British were taking advantage of the colonies. Taking advantage means you're using somebody or you are taking from them but not giving anything. So some of the Patriots felt that the British were taking advantage of the colonies, getting money from them, getting goods from them. Also, some of the Patriots believed that they would have more freedom and security if they had their own nation. They didn't want to rely on the king and the British army for protection. They wanted to have their own security and their own defense. Now, the Loyalist arguments, they also had some arguments as to why they felt that people should stay loyal to the king, were that the British government, the king provided order to the colonies, and order means structure, right? Think about, sort of like if you're at school, the teacher, the principal provide order to the school, right? There's rules. Things don't get too out of hand when you're at a sporting event, right? There's referees to provide order. So they felt that the British provided order to the colonies. And without that British presence, things may get a little, people may get a little carried away. It might get too wild there. Also, some people felt that they should trust the wisdom and experience of the monarchy. And this word monarchy, that means king or royalty. So they felt that the monarchy, that they knew what they were doing, that they had the wisdom and the experience, and that they should listen to them. So that's why the people in the colonies, those were some of the reasons that they had for either being patriots or being loyalists. And we're going to learn more about that as we go through. Now, the next section, that was our introduction there. Now we're going to move on to section 1, which is a little overview of who were the Loyalists and the Patriots. So the Loyalists, as we said previously, were the people that wanted to remain loyal to the king. They wanted to support Great Britain. And the Patriots were the people that wanted to break away or break free from Great Britain and British rule. So the colonies were divided over the question of independence or separation from Great Britain. Now, if I click on that word independence, it says separation from or freedom from control by another country or government. So they wanted to separate from Great Britain. They wanted to be free from that control. Historians disagree about how many colonists chose to be either patriots or loyalists. And historians are people that study history. Almost all believe that there were many more patriots than loyalists, but probably less than half of the colonists were patriots. Okay, so less than half of the colonists were patriots. So if you know anything about fractions, right, picture a circle, cut it in half. Less than half were patriots. Some colonists were neutral or did not take sides. So they did not want to get in the middle of this. They didn't want to get involved. So they did not take a side. The Loyalists included many kinds of people, some of whom were rich landowners. They feared that patriot mobs might take their property. Some Loyalists were governors who had been appointed to their jobs by King George III. These men liked their government and they felt that it was their duty to make sure that British laws were obeyed in the colonies. So those Loyalists were people that were wealthy. They had very high positions or important jobs that were given to them by the king, and they didn't want to go against him. Other Loyalists were religious leaders who believed that the king's power came from God. Many of them were members of the Church of England, Great Britain's official church. And if you remember back to our earlier chapters on comparing the colonies, you remember that the Church of England was the main church at that time. They believed that it was wrong to oppose the king and told their followers that they had a duty to be loyal to the church and to the king. So they felt that the king's power came from God, and that by listening to the king, you were thereby listening to God. So those were some of the reasons that the loyalists had for wanting to stay part of Great Britain. But not all of the colonists were loyalists. Many colonists were patriots, including merchants who lived in and around the city of Boston. Boston is in the state of Massachusetts, if you think back to Plymouth, right? They were angry about British taxes on goods such as tea and paper. The taxes hurt their businesses because many colonists boycotted the taxed goods. So remember the Stamp Act, right? When they had to pay to have a special stamp put on their paper goods. Remember the Boston Tea Party? So the colonists were becoming angry that the king was putting all these taxes and extra fees on things. So they started to boycott or not buy the taxed goods. Some patriots were lawyers who fought in the courts against British laws that they thought were unfair. They believed that the colonists should have more say in making laws that directly affected them. So think back to taxation without representation. They felt like they were paying taxes to this king, but they weren't having any say in how they were governed, what laws were being made, and they were not having any voice. Some patriots were farmers, while others were people who worked at crafts, such as printing and shipbuilding. Remember, craftsmen. Many believed that independence would bring more wealth to the colonies. In this lesson, you will learn about 3 loyalists and 3 patriots. As you read about these people, think about why they felt the way they did. What reasons did each give for being a loyalist or a patriot? So we're not going to start to read about them today, but we will be reading about 3 loyalists and 3 patriots. And you can see that they all had very different reasons for feeling the way that they did. Now, down here, we have another little T-chart here. And over here are some attributes or some things that are true about each of these groups. And we have to decide, does it describe a loyalist or does it describe a patriot? So remember, loyalist is loyal to the king. They want to stay part of Great Britain. Patriot is somebody who wants to be free of Great Britain. So religious leaders, were they most likely to be a loyalist or a patriot? Well, up here, in this paragraph, it did say that some loyalists were religious leaders who believed that the king's power came from God. So I'm going to take this and put that drag and drop right underneath the loyalist column. The next one is farmers. So let's scroll up again. And right here, it says that some patriots were farmers. So I'm going to drag and drop farmers over here. Lawyers. Some patriots were lawyers. It's right there in that paragraph. And they fought in the courts against British laws that they thought were unfair. So I'm going to drag and drop that under patriot. Rich landowners. So let's see. The loyalists included many kinds of people, some of whom were rich landowners. They feared that patriot mobs might take their property. So right there, that tells me that loyalists, rich landowners were loyalists. They were loyal to the king. Boston merchants. And remember, merchants are people who sell things or shop owners. So many colonists were patriots, including merchants who lived in around the city of Boston. So I'm going to drag Boston merchants down here to patriot. And the last one is appointed governors. Now there's only one spot left, but let's go back up and see why that is true. Okay, now up here it says some loyalists were governors who had been appointed to their jobs by King George III. These men liked their government and they felt that it was their duty to make sure that British laws were obeyed in the colonies. So they were definitely loyalists. They were thankful to the king because he gave them this sort of cushy job where they made a lot of money, they had a lot of power, so they were not going to go against the king at that time. Now, I have them all set, so let me check my answers. And I got them all right. So we're going to stop there for today, but you can look at these pages on your TCI site. If you sign in, log into TCI, you can also look in your textbook and complete the Google form that goes along with the introduction and section 1. And we'll be back time and we will start to learn about some of those loyalists and patriots and their reasons for why they felt that way. Thanks for watching, and I hope this was helpful.